Usually, when you talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this underlying expectation of precision, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It feels like engineering. You know, you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the screen, and the doctor just points and says, like, there it is, that's the problem.
Right, it's very comforting in a way.
It is. We like things to be visible, to be categorized. It's broken or it's not broken. It's clean.
Yeah, it provides this, well, an illusion of perfect objectivity. I mean, the machine takes the picture, the expert reads the picture, and reality is established. You don't question the machine itself.
Right. You don't look at the x-ray machine and go, is this thing lying to me? But when you step into the world of cyber espionage and threat intelligence and digital forensics.
The machine is totally broken.
Exactly. That x-ray machine is broken. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape where the water aren't just murky, they are actively being polluted.
Actively polluted, yeah.
So today, for you listening, we're doing a deep dive into a story out of South America where the people operating that diagnostic machine might actually be the ones, you know, handing out the hammers to break the bones.
Or at the very least, they're convincing you that your bones are broken so they can sell you the cast.
Sell you the cast, yeah.
Because that is the fundamental premise of the narrative we are unpacking today. We are looking at a multi-layered, highly complex technical thriller.
It really is a thriller.
It is. And it's playing out primarily across Uruguay and Argentina. But the corporate roots of the operation, ironically, are plated firmly in a virtual office in the United Kingdom.
Which is wild, and we have a massive stack of source material to get through for this. I'm talking about extensive time-stamped forensic dossiers, official corporate filings pulled directly from the UK company's house registry.
Which are public record, by the way.
Right, public record. Plus, media kits, press releases, in-depth analyses from independent cybersecurity watchdogs, specifically databreaches.net. And on top of all that, leaked internal documents from a hacktivist collective known as Pampa Leaks.
It's a huge mountain of data. And our mandate with this material is to analyze the underlying structural mechanics, right?
Right.
We are dissecting the commercialization of cyber panic. We're going to look at the forensic evidence, the behavioral anomalies, and the economic incentives of the cybersecurity industry itself.
Just to understand how fear is manufactured.
Exactly. Manufactured, packaged, and ultimately sold to governments and the public.
It really forces you to wonder, at what point do the people selling us security become the ones manufacturing the panic?
It's the ultimate question.
So let's just dive right into the architecture of the situation, because before we get into the hacking claims and the arrests and the massive media frenzy, we have to understand the two main architects of this narrative war.
Right, the two main characters.
Yeah, these are two individuals representing entirely different approaches to the business of cybersecurity. So let's start with the executive at the center of the controversy.
Okay.
We are looking at an individual named Mauro Francisco Cáseres, who operates professionally under the alias Mauro Eldritch.
Right, Mauro Eldritch.
So what does his professional profile actually look like on paper?
Well, on paper, and specifically in the public relations sphere, the profile is designed to project overwhelming authority. I mean, Mauro Eldritch presents himself as an elite, internationally recognized Argentinian hacker.
Okay.
He's the founder and public face of a threat intelligence firm called Birmingham Cyber Arms, operating legally as BCA LTD.
And the resume attached to that persona is, it's flashy. He claims to have spoken at DEF CON up to 15 times.
Which is a huge claim.
Massive. For anyone outside the industry, just for context, DEF CON in Las Vegas is essentially the Super Bowl, the Olympics, and the World Economic Forum of hacking all rolled into one.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so getting selected to speak there is a massive validator of technical skill.
It's the ultimate credential in that specific subculture. Though it is worth pointing out right away that independent forensic investigators going through the DEF CON archives have only been able to verify 6 of those appearances.
Oh, wait, only 6, not 15.
Not 15. Only 6 are verified. Still, appearing on that stage 6 times indicates a capability to present complex technical concepts to a highly critical audience. It's not nothing.
Right, it's still impressive, even if it's inflated.
Yeah.
And he also holds a position leading the Quetzal team at a cryptocurrency platform called Bitso,
Right.
where he focuses on Web3 threat research. Plus, he runs a threat intelligence repository called mefiltrons.com.
Yeah, and he's publicly collaborated with major malware analysis platforms like Anawai.org to publish investigations into highly advanced state-sponsored actors.
Like North Korea's Lazarus Group, right?
Exactly. And the Lazarus Group is notorious. They are responsible for some of the largest cryptocurrency heists in history. So if you're a local journalist in South America or a mid-level government official looking for an expert quote on a cyber attack, this profile is an absolute magnet.
I can see that. You see DF Con, you see North Korean threat research, you see a UK-based cyber intelligence firm.
You immediately assign credibility. It's a profile built for maximum public amplification.
But the sources we have don't just stop at the LinkedIn profile or the press releases. They include the actual corporate filings from the UK government.
Yes.
And this is where the facade of a massive global threat intelligence operation starts to show some incredibly strange structural cracks. Let's look at the UK company's house filings for BCA LTD, company number 1193530.
Yeah, the contrast between the public narrative and the corporate reality here is just jarring. BCA LTD was incorporated in April 2019. Its registered corporate address is 27 Old Gloucester Street in London.
Okay, so looking at the geographic analysis in the dossier, 27 Old Gloucester Street is a very famous address in the corporate world, but not for the right reasons.
Likely not.
It's a mail forwarding service. It's a virtual office.
Yes. It is incredibly common for non-UK resident directors who want the prestige of a London address to register there. You pay a small fee, and they forward your mail. There are literally thousands of companies registered to that exact building.
Wow.
It is not a bustling corporate headquarters with server racks, glowing monitors, and a team of analysts monitoring global threat feeds. It's a mailbox.
It's a mailbox.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the operational size of the company. BCA LTD is registered under UK law as a micro-entity. Now, I understand that startups have to begin somewhere, right?
Sure, yeah.
But the internal numbers here are staggering.
They really are. A micro-entity in the UK legal framework is a business so small that it's granted minimal financial reporting requirements. And according to BCA LTD's own annual filings, year after year, the company has 0 employees.
Wait, 0?
0. It's a one-man show operating behind a corporate veil.
Okay, and the capitalization, like how much money did they start with?
The company was founded with exactly £15 in share capital.
£15.
Okay.
That's the cost of a decent lunch. I mean, how does an intelligence firm claiming to monitor advanced persistent threats globally and offering a proprietary platform to national governments capitalize itself with £15?
They don't, practically speaking. That £15 is merely the statutory minimum required to generate the legal entity. The corporate shell exists entirely to lend an aura of European institutional weight to a sole operator based in Argentina.
Just for optics.
Totally. But the financial trajectory in the filings is even more revealing. The documents show that their net liabilities, so their unsecured debts, grew from roughly £44,000 in 2024 to over £80,000 by early 2025.
Wait. If they have 0 employees and are just operating out of a virtual mailbox, how do you rack up £80,000 in debt? Who do they owe that money to?
Well, unsecured liabilities in a micro-entity structure often represent money owed to the director themselves, unpaid taxes, or debts to digital infrastructure suppliers, like server hosting or API access fees.
Okay.
It indicates a business model that is structurally bleeding cash despite its high-profile public posturing.
And right around the time the pressure from these independent investigations was mounting, like in early 2026, the company's house filings show a major organizational shift.
Right.
Mauro Cáseres officially stepped down as the person with significant control, the PSC of the company.
It's a classic tactical maneuver in corporate structuring. By removing himself as the PSC, he creates legal distance between himself and those mounting liabilities. Meanwhile, the BCA brand name can theoretically continue to be utilized in press releases.
So you have a highly amplified public persona built on an offshore shell company with 0 staff, sinking into debt, suddenly playing musical chairs with its own directorship.
It paints a picture of a marketing engine running completely on fumes.
That's fascinating. Okay, now let's pivot to the foil in this narrative. The individual who started digging into those fumes. The primary investigator challenging BCA's entire narrative structure is Alberto Daniel Hill. So, what is his background?
So based on the forensic documents and media kits provided, Alberto Daniel Hill is an independent cybersecurity researcher based in Uruguay. And he comes at this field from an entirely different angle. He has over 20 years of experience in computer forensics and ethical hacking.
Okay, 20 years. And his educational background is deeply institutional. Like, he holds a master's degree in digital currencies from the University of Nicosia. He's a computer engineer, and he holds several rigorous industry certifications.
Yeah, the PMP, CSX, and CEH, which stands for Certified Ethical Hacker.
But it's his practical experience that really sets up the contrast here, isn't it?
Exactly. Hill is a former forensic examiner for Interpol and the Uruguayan Supreme Court of Justice.
Okay, let's pause on that. Being a forensic examiner for a Supreme Court is not about giving a flashy presentation at a conference.
No, not at all.
It is about chain of custody. It's about mathematical proof. If you present digital evidence to a high court, you have to prove exactly where it came from, how it was hashed, and guarantee it hasn't been tampered with.
Right. The stakes are totally different.
It's a completely different evidentiary standard than just, tweeting a screenshot.
And that institutional rigor defines his current approach. He operates a platform called the Cybermidnight Club and advocates for a philosophy of radical transparency.
Radical transparency. I like that.
Yeah. Instead of dropping vague hints to the media, Hill polishes 35-page PDF dossiers. He provides the raw screenshots, the timestamps, the packet captures, and the verifiable links. He forces the observer to look at the underlying math of a cyberattack.
And his counter-narratives aren't just isolated rants on a blog somewhere. His forensic work in the specific case against BCA has been reviewed and validated by international independent watchdogs,
Right.
like databreaches.net, which is highly respected for its neutral, evidence-based reporting.
It creates a really fascinating asymmetry. You have the executive, Mauro Eldritch, whose operational power relies entirely on controlling the media narrative through exclusive drops and perceived institutional weight.
Right.
Facing off against him is the investigator, Alberto Daniel Hill, whose power relies entirely on open-source forensic evidence and stripping away the marketing.
So we have a UK microentity with £80,000 in debt and a penchant for media attention, and a former Supreme Court forensic examiner with a habit of publishing dense technical receipts.
They are on a total collision course.
But how did they actually cross paths? I mean, it started with the sudden, highly publicized appearance of a mysterious hacker group on the dark web.
A group that initially appeared under the moniker Expresidents, before later rebranding to Dead Presidents.
Let's track their arrival, because the timeline is crucial here. The ex-president's persona suddenly pops up on Breach Forums, and Breach Forums is a notorious underground marketplace where cyber criminals buy and sell stolen data, right?
Exactly. It's a major hub. And almost immediately, they start claiming massive critical breaches of Uruguayan state infrastructure.
To a casual observer or, a non-technical journalist, it looked like a national cybersecurity crisis unfolding in real time.
Oh, absolutely. But when independent forensic investigators like Hill actually looked at the data packets being offered as proof on breach forums, they noticed massive, glaring anomalies.
Like what?
The claims completely disconnected from the reality of the data.
The storage size issue is the most glaring red flag to me. Can you explain the discrepancy there?
Yeah, it fundamentally defies the logic of data architecture. So ex-presidents would post on the forum claiming they had successfully breached and downloaded the entire central database of a major governmental body. Let's take the Intendencia de Flores as an example. It's a regional government in Uruguay.
Okay.
A database for a regional government contains thousands of employee records, citizen tax files, infrastructural blueprints, years of internal emails. It should be gigabytes, if not terabytes, of data.
Right. It's a massive digital footprint. You don't just put that on a thumb drive.
Exactly. But the file that ex-presidents uploaded to the forum as cryptographic proof of this massive breach was 39.6 kilobytes.
Wait, 39.6 kilobytes?
Yes.
That is practically microscopic. I mean, it's like claiming you stole the entire Library of Congress, but the hard drive you hand over as proof only has enough storage space to hold half of a single tweet.
It's an absurdity. It's mathematically impossible for that file to contain what they claim to contain.
And it wasn't an isolated incident, right?
No, not at all. The investigators found a consistent pattern of ex-presidents inflating their claims using what are known as stealer logs.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of a stealer log, because this is the core of how the threat was manufactured. How does a stealer log differ from an actual infrastructure breach?
Well, a genuine infrastructure breach requires exploiting a vulnerability in a server's architecture. The hacker bypasses the firewall, gains administrative access to the backend, and pulls the core data directly from the source. It is complex, highly targeted work.
Okay, and a stealer log?
A stealer log, on the other hand, is the byproduct of indiscriminate malware, often programs like Redline or Vidar.
Malware that infects an individual's personal machine.
Precisely. Let's say a low-level clerk at a government ministry tries to download a pirated video game on their home computer, or they click a phishing link in an email.
Happens all the time.
All the time. The malware quietly installs itself and scrapes everything saved in their local web browser, their cookies, their personal Netflix password, and maybe, crucially, the login credentials they use to access the government's employee portal. That scraped data is bundled into a text file. That is a Stealer log.
Wow, so the server itself was never hacked. The government's infrastructure wasn't breached at all. One employee just had poor digital hygiene on a local device.
Correct. And Stealer logs are incredibly common. They're sold in bulk on the dark web for pennies. What the forensic evidence shows is that Expresidents would acquire these individual, isolated Stealer logs, post the stolen credentials of that single clerk on breach forums, and frame it with sensational titles claiming the entire central government infrastructure was under their control.
It is the deliberate theatrical inflation of a micro-incident into a macro threat.
Exactly.
Now, there's another behavioral detail in the dossiers that highlights the artificial nature of this persona. It involves a supposed hack on the Partido Nacional, which is a major political party in Uruguay. Ex-presidents claim they compromised the party's website using an XSS HTML injection,
which technically speaking is a trivial client-side vulnerability. It allows an attacker to temporarily alter how a web page looks on an individual's browser, like changing a headline on your specific screen, but it does not grant access to the underlying server or the database.
It's digital vandalism, basically, not a breach. But the fascinating part isn't the technical weakness of the attack, it's the language used in the forum post claiming the attack. The ex-president's persona used the phrase blancos pios.
Right, and blancos pios is a highly specific, localized slur used in Uruguayan political discourse, typically associated with left-wing critiques of the Partido Nacional.
Now, we need to be explicitly clear here for everyone listening.
Yeah.
We are analyzing the forensic timeline, not the politics.
Exactly.
The sources we are citing do not take a political stance, and neither are we. We are looking strictly at the behavioral consistency of the threat actor.
And as a behavioral analyst looking at a threat actor, that phrase is a massive, glowing anomaly. The persona of ex-presidents was built to look like an elite, financially motivated cybercriminal syndicate. A Russian or Eastern European ransomware gang doesn't care about the granular, historical political rivalries of a South American nation.
Right, they care about Bitcoin.
They care about Bitcoin. For a supposed elite syndicate to suddenly start role-playing as a localized, highly partisan activist reveals a severe lack of character consistency. It suggests the persona is being operated locally by someone with a vested interest in the specific cultural impact of the hack.
The mask slipped, but the behavioral red flags didn't stop at the language. They extended into the fundamental operational security, the OPSEC of the ex-president's account itself. This is where it becomes glaringly obvious to anyone familiar with dark web economics that this wasn't a real criminal enterprise.
The underground economy of forums like breach forums relies entirely on peer-to-peer encrypted communication. That is the lifeblood of the ecosystem. If you have a zero-day exploit or a massive database of credit cards, you don't just post it publicly for free. You post a sample, and then you negotiate the sale privately.
But when investigators looked at the ex-president's profile,
the account had its private messages, its PMs completely disabled. They were not accepting inbound communications.
It makes absolutely no sense. If you are a financially motivated hacker, why would you turn off the only mechanism you have to make money?
It's baffling.
It's like opening a retail store, heavily advertising a grand opening, and then locking the front door, boarding up the windows, and cutting the phone lines. You clearly aren't trying to sell a product.
Which begs the question, if they weren't there to conduct illicit business, why were they there? The only logical conclusion is that they were there merely to establish a time-stamped superficial presence. They needed the forum posts to exist so that someone else could point to them.
Furthermore, they exhibited total apathy toward their reputation score within the forum community. In that ecosystem, reputation is currency. If you are labeled a scammer, nobody buys from you.
And the leaked forum screenshots show ex-presidents getting continually disciplined and publicly called out by high-ranking forum moderators, including a prominent user named Intel Broker, for posting dead links, fake data, and inflating file sizes.
A real threat actor would fiercely defend their reputation or immediately create a new account to maintain their standing.
Yeah, but ex-presidents simply ignored the moderators. They didn't care that the criminal community knew they were fake because the criminal community wasn't their target audience.
Right. The target audience was the mainstream media and the public. Which brings us perfectly to the mechanism that translated these fake forum posts into national panic. The investigators mapped out what they called the BCA loop, or, translated from the Spanish dossier, the smoke sellers.
It is a highly efficient, highly repetitive, four-step operational matrix. And when you look at the timeline, the synchronization is incredible.
Let's break down the 4 steps of this smoke-selling matrix. What happens first?
Step 1. The Expresidents persona logs into breach forums and drops a sensationalized post claiming a new hack, uploading a trivial 39-kilobyte file or a standard sealer log as proof.
Step 2. The speed of this step is what gives the game away. Within an incredibly short time frame, sometimes exactly 1 hour after the dark web post goes live, BCA LTD, operating out of their virtual office, discovers the threat. They immediately broadcast an urgent alert across their threat feeds and social media, warning that Uruguayan infrastructure is under attack.
Step 3. BCA LTD bypasses the affected organizations entirely and feeds this discovery exclusively to a specific journalist in Uruguay, Juan Pablo DeMarco, who writes for the prominent national newspaper El Observador.
Step 4. DeMarco, taking the intelligence provided by the UK-registered firm at face value, publishes a sensational front-page article. The article details the terrifying capabilities of the Expresidents group and explicitly cites BCA LTD and Mauro Eldritch as the premier cybersecurity experts who uncovered the threat and are valiantly warning the public.
It is a closed-loop ecosystem of validation. The fake hack validates the expert's monitoring capabilities, and the expert's press release validates the fake hack to the public. And this loop was highly profitable.
By positioning themselves as the only entity capable of detecting these rapid-fire, albeit fabricated attacks, BCA LTD was able to aggressively market their proprietary threat monitoring platform.
The platform is called Sheriff, right?
Yes, Sheriff. They marketed Sheriff to frighten corporations and government agencies, charging a reported $29,000 a year for the service.
I mean, it's a brilliant, if entirely cynical, business model. You manufacture the disease, you loudly diagnose the disease in the national press, and then you sell the $29,000 cure.
Exactly. But if they were operating this loop so efficiently, how did the forensic investigators actually prove the connection? I mean, the timing is suspicious, sure, but is there hard technical evidence linking BCA directly to the creation of the Expresidents persona?
There is, and it is the most damning technical correlation in the entire stack of dossiers. The Pampa Leaks documents include leaked screenshots of BCA LTD's own internal Linux terminal.
A Linux terminal. So we are looking at the actual command line interface of the system BCA uses to monitor threats.
Yes. These internal screenshots show BCA system proactively querying commercial intelligence feeds for standard, low-level stealer logs. They were actively searching for compromised credentials belonging to very specific, obscure governmental login URLs, like regional ministry subdomains.
And what's the correlation?
The exact URLs and the exact stealer logs that BCA was quietly searching for on their internal terminal would subsequently appear on breach forums hours or days later, posted by Expresidents as proof of a massive infrastructure hack.
Oh, wow. It connects the dots perfectly. BCA LTD harvests commercially available stealer logs. They launder those logs through their puppet persona, Expresidents, to make them look like targeted malicious breaches. They then report on their own puppet's activities to the press to sell their Sheriff platform.
They had complete control of both sides of the chessboard.
It worked flawlessly. The media consumed the narrative, the government was panicked, and the Sheriff platform had its marketing material. It was a perfect system, well, until a real threat actor entered the ecosystem and disrupted the narrative.
Right. Enter Pampa Leaks.
Yeah, this is an actual hacktivist collective. They step onto the scene, look at the Expresidents posts on breach forums, and immediately recognize it as a farce. They start publicly mocking Expresidents. They tell them, "Don't come back, boys, you're embarrassing yourselves." They expose the technical incompetence of the fabricated group.
And this public humiliation of the Expresidents persona triggers a cascade of events that forces Mauro Eldritch into a highly contradictory set of behaviors.
And to understand the depth of the contradiction, we have to establish what Mauro's officially stated operational protocols actually were.
Right. We have an interview on the record. Mauro gave an interview to the independent watchdog databreaches.net. They asked him point blank about BCA's practices when they uncover leaked databases or compromised credentials online.
What did he say?
His response was unequivocal. He explicitly stated that when BCA finds compromised data, They do not reach out to the affected organizations if there is no easily accessible contact info or a security.txt file on the server. He outlined a strictly hands-off observational policy. They simply tweet about the finding or contact the media to raise general awareness.
So his defense to the international watchdog is basically, we are just passive observers. We watch the feeds and we tell the newspapers. We do not get involved.
Right.
But when Pampaleaks insults his alleged puppet persona, Expresidents, that passive policy vanishes entirely. Suddenly, the narrative shifts from passive observation to aggressive, targeted retaliation.
According to the official narrative pushed by BCA and amplified by El Observador, the Expresidents group grew furious over the insults from Pampaleaks. In retaliation, Expresidents allegedly doxed the mastermind leader of Pampaleaks. They exposed his real-world identity, his home address, his family details, and posted it online.
And the BCA narrative claims that they somehow intercepted the log of this intense hacker fight, acquired the doxing data, and heroically supplied it directly to the Uruguayan police, ensuring it was structured as legally admissible evidence.
This is where we must apply critical logic. How probable is it that a director who explicitly claimed a hands-off, we just tweet policy to an international watchdog would suddenly pivot so dramatically?
It doesn't make sense.
Why would he become deeply personally involved in spearheading a targeted investigation to unmask a specific hacktivist's identity, bypass standard international protocols, and act as a direct informant to local South American law enforcement?
It is a massive contradiction. It completely shatters the illusion of the passive threat intelligence monitor. If you are a UK microentity, why are you doing the heavy lifting for the cybercrime division in Montevideo over an internet forum dispute?
Exactly.
But even beyond the ethical whiplash, there is a fundamental technical impossibility at the very core of this hacker fight narrative.
Let's examine the mechanics of the impossible interaction. The entire police intervention is predicated on the claim that Expresidents and Pampaleaks had an altercation that generated a digital log, which BCA then captured. But let's remember our forensic analysis of the Expresidents' operational security from earlier.
They had their private messages completely disabled on the forum.
Exactly. Expresidents had no PMs, no listed contact information, no known jabber handles, and no active online presence anywhere outside of dropping dead links on public boards. They were a digital ghost with no inbound communication channels.
So how exactly were they interacting with Pampaleaks? If you can't receive a message, you can't have a fight.
You can't. It is technically impossible to generate a two-way communication log with an entity that has completely severed its inbound communication architecture.
Wait, if the fight never happened, where did the doxing data come from? What did BCA actually hand to the Uruguayan police to trigger an arrest?
The independent forensic investigators assert that the intelligence was a complete fabrication, stitched together from digital scrap. They proved that BCA simply accessed an old, outdated, and entirely unrelated docs from a dark web archive site called Doxbin.
Doxbin's basically a Wikipedia for stolen personal identities, right? People just dump personal info there.
Yes, and data rots very quickly on those sites. The specific docs BCA used had been posted anonymously over a year prior. It targeted a 19-year-old kid. The forensic evidence indicates BCA downloaded this old file, repackaged it, and handed it to the media and the police, framing it as a fresh, retaliatory strike born out of a gang war between dead presidents and Pampaleaks.
I have to ask about the normalcy of this protocol. I mean, is it normal for an Argentine citizen who operates a micro-entity in London with 0 employees and £80,000 in debt to circumvent normal channels, approach foreign police force and say, here is a legally admissible log of a hacker fight, please go arrest this teenager?
It is entirely abnormal and breaches almost every tenet of standard threat intelligence ethics. Private intelligence firms are observers, not law enforcement agencies. Providing unverified, repackaged, year-old data from Doxbin directly to police to trigger an arrest crosses a massive red line.
Wow.
It moves the firm from the realm of passive observation into active, potentially malicious interference in a state investigation, especially when that firm has a direct commercial interest in validating the threat level of the persona supposedly providing the data.
They needed the police to make an arrest to prove that the threat they were selling was real. And the tragedy here is the real-world consequence. The stop being about forum drama and 39-kilobyte files. The result of this repackaged Doxbin file was a real 19-year-old kid having his door kicked in by the police.
Yeah, and to understand why the police acted so swiftly on highly questionable intelligence, we have to look at the socio-political pressure cooker in Uruguay at that exact moment. The state-owned telecommunications subsidiary, Antel, had just suffered a highly publicized breach of their TuID system.
Can you explain TuID? Because that elevates the stakes significantly.
Sure, TuID translates to Your ID. It is a digital citizen identification system. It's the platform Uruguayans use to interact securely with state services, sign legal documents digitally, and access sensitive personal portals. A breach of the TuID system isn't just a technical glitch, it's a profound compromise of national trust.
So the public is terrified that their digital identities are stolen. The media is demanding answers.
The pressure on the Ministry of the Interior, the authorities, and the Cybercrime Department to find a culprit, to show strength and regain control of the narrative, was immense. They needed a win, and they needed it immediately.
And right at the peak of this institutional panic, BCA LTD hands them a bow-tied package like, here's the mastermind leader of PampaLeaks, the group terrorizing your infrastructure, conveniently doxxed by a rival hacker group. We have the logs.
It was the perfect silver bullet. The police executed the raid based on this intelligence. They arrested a 19-year-old youth, known online by the aliases Uruguayo337 or Vladdy. The authorities and the media immediately paraded him before the public as the apex predator of the cyber underworld, the mastermind leader of the PampaLeaks organization. They declared the case closed, the threat neutralized.
But Alberto Daniel Hill stepped in. The former Supreme Court forensic examiner looked at the evidence, looked at the arrest, and didn't mince words. He publicly stated, in both English and Spanish across his platforms, La policía se equivocó. The police made a mistake.
Hill's subsequent analysis details the architecture of what he terms the mecanismo del chivo expiatorio, the scapegoat mechanism.
How does the scapegoat mechanism function in this specific technical context? Because Hill argued this kid wasn't an advanced persistent threat.
According to the forensic dossiers compiled by Hill and validated by the leaked PampaLeaks communications, this 19-year-old was mathematically incapable of being the mastermind. He was a low-level, peripheral former collaborator. His primary function was acting as a reseller for an automated telegram tool called PampaBot.
Let's explain PampaBot. How does a telegram bot factor into a national infrastructure breach?
Well, hackers often automate data lookups to monetize stolen databases. PampaBot was a script running on the Telegram messaging app. If you had access, you could type in a Uruguayan citizen's name, and the bot would spit out their leaked personal information.
And Vladdy, the 19-year-old, he built this bot.
No, he didn't build it, and he didn't hack the databases that fed it. He merely possessed Telegram API access tokens. He had enough tokens to use a command function to transfer limited access rights to other Telegram users so they can run their own data lookups. He was the digital equivalent of a kid scalping tickets outside a concert. He wasn't the band, and he didn't own the stadium.
But he was the most visible target.
Exactly. His real-world identity was already floating around the dark web because he had been doxxed on Doxbin a year earlier. He was the weakest, most exposed link in the entire chain.
So the argument Hill presents is that the authorities, desperate for a quick PR win to pacify the public and the media, targeted this highly accessible teenager using BCO's contaminated, repackaged intelligence. They took a ticket scalper and charged him as the cartel boss.
And Hill points out the most dangerous secondary effect of this mechanism, which he calls the protocolo del silencio, the protocol of silence. By arresting a convenient scapegoat and loudly declaring victory, the authorities and the media effectively closed the book on the TuID investigation.
Which means the actual hacktivists who breached the system remained completely free.
More importantly, the structural architectural vulnerabilities in the state's digital infrastructure that allowed the TuID breach in the first place remained unpatched and ignored. The public was sold a false sense of security, while the real doors were left wide open.
It's a terrifying thought. You have a system where everyone gets what they want except the public. The police get their arrest, the media gets their headline, BCA gets to validate their $29,000 sheriff platform, and the actual hackers get to keep operating. But when Hill and platforms like databreaches.net started exposing this symbiotic triad, when they started publishing the 35-page forensic PDFs proving the hacks were mathematically impossible, the PMs were disabled, and the logs were recycled from Doxbin, how did BCA respond? Did they release server logs or packet captures to defend their technical narrative?
No. When confronted with overwhelming forensic evidence, they abandoned the technical debate entirely. According to the documents, they responded with aggressive legal threats and censorship tactics.
They weaponized intellectual property law, trademark strikes.
Yes. BCA LTD and Mauro Eldritch filed formal trademark infringement complaints with the major digital hosting providers. Specifically, they targeted Cloudflare, the massive infrastructure company that was hosting Hill's investigative site, and LinkedIn, where Hill was publishing his articles. They demanded the immediate permanent removal of Hill's 35-page forensic dossier, claiming it violated their registered corporate trademarks.
And because of how the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and global platform moderation systems work, it actually succeeded temporarily.
It did.
Cloudflare and LinkedIn are dealing with millions of requests a day. They often automate these takedowns or use overwhelmed staff who shoot first and ask questions later. The content was taken down while the platforms investigated.
But here is where the forensic investigators uncovered the most absurd, fatal flaw in BCA's censorship strategy. The dossiers refer to it as the smoking gun of the trademark lie.
It is pure audacity. Tell everyone what specific legal number BCA used on those official takedown forms to prove they own the trademark.
Well, when you file an official trademark complaint in the United Kingdom, or utilizing UK corporate identity, you're legally required to provide a UK Intellectual Property Office, a UKIPO trademark registration number. This number proves you own the specific intellectual property being contested. On the legal takedown forms submitted to Cloudflare, BCA LTD provided the number 11935,300.
11935,300. Now, if you've been following the architecture of this deep dive, that number should sound very familiar.
It is their UK company's house registration number.
It's just their corporate ID. It has absolutely nothing to do with intellectual property, patents, or trademarks. It merely proves that a micro-entity with 0 employees exists at a virtual mailbox in London. It's like me trying to get into an exclusive, highly secured VIP club, and when the bouncer asks for my cryptographic VIP pass, I just aggressively shove my driver's license in his face and say, "There's a number on it, let me in."
It is a legally meaningless string of digits in the context of intellectual property law. But because they were dealing with automated platform moderation systems that don't proactively cross-reference foreign corporate registries against intellectual property databases, it looked official enough to trigger the automated takedown protocols.
It wasn't a legal strategy. It was a brute force social engineering attack on the moderation platforms themselves, designed purely to silence a critic who had the math to prove they were lying.
And from an analytical perspective, when you combine a complete lack of technical defense with highly aggressive, legally dubious censorship tactics utilizing fake intellectual property claims, the risk assessment profile of the company skyrockets. It is the behavior of an entity attempting to suppress evidence, not an entity attempting to debate facts.
So we have walked through the mechanics of this entire operation. We have 2 wildly different, mutually exclusive versions of reality playing out. We have the corporate media narrative supported by the police and the UK micro-entity, and we have the independent forensic narrative supported by the former Supreme Court examiner and international watchdogs. I want us to explicitly rank the consistency of both these narratives on a scale of 1 to 10. We need to base this purely on the forensic structural evidence we've reviewed. Let's highlight exactly what is clear and what is completely incoherent in each version.
Let's start with version A, the official narrative put forth by Mauro Eldritch, BCA LTD, and amplified by Juan Pablo DeMarco at El Observador.
Okay, so the summary of version A is this. Expresidents is an elite, highly capable, financially motivated threat actor. They successfully hacked major Uruguayan government infrastructure. They got into a heated dispute with Pampa Leaks, tracked down and doxed the 19-year-old mastermind leader of the group, and BCA heroically intercepted the log of this interaction, processed it into legally admissible evidence, and helped the police save the day, protecting the nation.
Now, let's look at what is structurally incoherent in version A. We have to ask, why did a supposedly elite threat actor post microscopic 39-kilobyte files as cryptographic proof of a massive database breach? Why did they deliberately disable their private messages, actively preventing any commercial sales of their stolen data, which defeats the entire purpose of a financially motivated actor? How did BCA communicate with a dark web persona that had no inbound contact methods to obtain a legally admissible log of a fight?
And zooming out to the macroeconomic level, why does a UK-registered micro-entity with £80,000 in unsecured debt and 0 actual employees care so deeply and invest so many resources into acting as a free, proactive police informant for local Uruguayan political drama?
Based on the forensic evidence, the behavioral profiling, and the structural realities of the dark web, I have to give version A a consistency rank of a 2 out of 10. For version A to be true, the observer is required to completely ignore the fundamental economics of cybercriminal behavior, basic technical logic regarding file sizes and server architecture, and the verified, documented operational security of the platforms involved. It is a highly inconsistent, almost fictional narrative.
Okay, now let's rank version B. The counter-narrative put forth by Alberto Daniel Hill, supported by the databreaches.net investigation and the Pampa Leaks dossier.
The summary version B is that BCA manufactured the Expresidents persona entirely. They used it to launder low-level Stealer logs to create the illusion of a national crisis, allowing them to market their $29,000 share of platform. When the real hacktivists mocked their technical incompetence, BCA retaliated by using an old recycled DocSpin file to frame a low-level 19-year-old token reseller as an APT mastermind. This provided the police with a highly convenient scapegoat for the TuID breach, and BCA then attempted to silence the forensic experts who exposed the timeline by weaponizing fake trademark strikes against their hosting providers.
Now, to be fair and strictly impartial, we have to look at the weaknesses. What is unclear or incoherent in version B?
The primary weakness in version B is the source bias of the initial leak. The Pampa Leaks dossier was written and compiled by self-admitted hacktivists who are actively breaching systems and leaking government data. They are not neutral academic observers. They have a distinct vested interest in destroying BCA's credibility. Furthermore, the act of monitoring threat actors, even fake, low-level, or incompetent ones, is standard operational practice for any threat intel firm. Distinguishing definitively between a firm monitoring a fake group and a firm controlling a fake group requires a bit of an inferential leap, even with the timeline correlations.
But taking that bias into account and looking purely at the math and the technical mechanisms, how does the physical evidence stack up?
Despite the inherent bias of the hacktivist sources, the physical, cryptographic evidence overwhelmingly supports their timeline. The mathematical impossibility of Expresidents' file sizes, the verified internal Linux screenshot showing BCA searching the exact target URLs prior to the forum posts, the documented undeniable use of a company's house ID to execute fake trademark strikes on Cloudflare, and the independent validation of the entire timeline by databreaches.net all make the forensic structure highly robust. Therefore, I rank the consistency of version B an 8 out of 10. The technical evidence aligns perfectly with the behavioral and economic incentives of the actors involved.
So we step back from the terminal, we look at the whole board. What is the fundamental takeaway here? Because this wasn't just a localized story about a dark web forum dispute and a 15-pound shell corporation in London.
No, it's a profound, documented look at the economics of threat intelligence. It shows exactly how fear is manufactured, packaged, and sold to the public and the media without any rigorous technical verification. It demonstrates how easily a highly complex, nuanced, technical reality, like a low-level employee downloading malware, can be flattened into a marketable, terrifying narrative of an elite infrastructure hack. The media gets their clicks, the firm gets their software subscriptions, the police get their mastermind suspect, and the actual structural vulnerabilities of the digital state are left completely wide open.
It brings us right back to the X-ray machine metaphor we started with. We desperately want the diagnosis to be simple. We want the bad guy caught, we want the jagged white line on the screen, and we want to believe the system is safe. But if the person operating that machine is operating a zero-employee micro-entity buried in debt and getting paid based on how many broken bones they can find, well, we have to start questioning the image on the screen. We have to look at the math.
The commercialization of cyber panic is a highly lucrative, fundamentally unregulated industry. And in the absence of radical transparency and forensic rigor, the loudest voice with the most official-sounding corporate address usually dictates reality.
So the next time you see a flashy, terrifying cybersecurity headline pop up on your feed like "Elite Hackers Breach National Grid" or "Mastermind Arrested in Cyber Raid," take a second. Look at it with a highly critical eye. Ask yourself, who is actually providing this intelligence? What is their corporate structure? Are they showing you the math or just giving you a quote? And most importantly, who is benefiting financially from your panic?
Because as we've seen meticulously documented in these dossiers, the gap between a breaking news headline and the forensic reality can be as wide as an ocean.
I want to leave you with a final thought to explore on your own. We've spent this time detailing the specific mechanics, the Stealer logs, and the trademark lies of this isolated case. But think about the macro global implications of what we just uncovered. If a single individual operating a 15-pound shell company from a virtual mail forwarding office in London can successfully dictate national law enforcement priorities, trigger real-world police raids, and manipulate media narratives across South America simply by adopting an authoritative persona and feeding repackaged data, how vulnerable is our global legal system? How susceptible are the courts, the police, and the press to simple brute force social engineering executed by the very experts we hire to protect us?
It forces a reevaluation of trust. When the watchdogs are the ones projecting the shadows on the wall, who exactly is keeping the system safe?
When the doctor is handing you the hammer, you might want to get a second opinion on that x-ray.